This is what we've been trying to avoid, right? I think part of why we have a show called This Week in White Supremacy, we talk about it, is to, bring that awareness of what's happening in the world, and we provide resources and books and different things in order to kind of dismantle this system, because until we dismantle this system, we're going to keep seeing things like this, right? And what we're talking about is what happened in Jacksonville this weekend, where a man who basically said he hated black people went into a Dollar General. They said first he actually tried to go into a historically black university, and that the security guard, whoever that security guard brother is, ran him out of the university. But then he found black people at this Dollar General, specifically killing 3 people. According to, they said, he said he hated black people. He was 100% lucid. He knew what he was doing. And then he turned the gun on himself and killed himself. And so, again, we're left in this situation where, you wake up again, and similar to what happened in Buffalo. And really, this is kind of our history as black and brown people in America, right? Is having to deal with this type of violence. When you go all the way back to how we got here to now, there's always that, looming over us, right? That shadow of violence of white people being violent towards us only because we're black could be there, right? And often is there. Just any initial reactions to what you all read or saw?
So I'll be honest with you. I stayed as far away from this as possible.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have this kind of affect me any further than I knew it was going to. We talk about on the show.
Right.
So I still don't know. I just know what we talked about earlier yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's name was Ryan Paul Meter. He was 21. 21 years old. Right. Wow. And that, that was a lot. There was a lot of, remember when Obama became president, and it's America's post-racial now, and it was this idea that all the racists are old. Dying out, and this new generation is multicultural, not racist. But what we're seeing and what we've been seeing recently with white supremacist violence is that's not the case, right? It's really becoming this generation is becoming more polarized, it seems like, and more adoptive of white supremacy policies. Trouble?
So I was reading the article, and I came across Ron DeSantis' response to this, and I just thought it was ironic.
Yeah. Because
here he is condemning bro for killing people on the basis of race, but here he is launching whole campaigns against curriculums that teach on the basis of racism.
Right.
To let people like this and people around people like this know the context of racism, the history of racism, how it still affects us today. Now we have whole classrooms of students who don't really know the impact of racism in Florida, who will probably read this story and be like, well, what's wrong with it?
Yeah, by his own volition, he couldn't even really talk about why this murder happened.
Yeah, right. Historically, this couldn't make the textbooks next year because then you would have to bring them. Remember, it's this whole Tulsa wasn't because of race. This whole idea slavery was beneficial. And we'll get into DeSantis because I think because this happened in Florida, and DeSantis, although it happened in an area in Florida where, has a number of black people, DeSantis having to come there, and it's really kind of like his worst nightmare in a sense. Yeah. Because remember, it was Ron DeSantis, I'm coming to you, Miracle. It was Ron DeSantis who, when the NAACP put a travel advisory out, and said that Florida has become hostile to black Americans and that black Americans should not travel to Florida. It was Ron DeSantis that called that a joke. Mm-hmm. That was a joke. That was a stunt, a political stunt. And now we have, if you were just somebody that visited Florida, went down there, here's a white person with swastikas on his rifle just randomly killing black people. Mm-hmm. And so it proves the NAACP's point and is refuted this idea of what DeSantis is talking about. Remember, this is also a couple months ago when, remember, they had a DeSantis rally outside of Disney World, and they had literal swastikas.
Yeah.
They had swastikas, they had big banners, they were praising DeSantis for going at Disney World, and DeSantis' campaign never condemned that act. And so it goes back to, it was a clip that people had been playing when DeSantis was running for governor against, what was the black dude that he was running for governor against?
Andrew Gilliam.
Andrew Gilliam. And Andrew Gilliam says, I don't know if you're racist, but the racists believe you're racist.
Yeah.
So the racists think you're racist. And so it is interesting to see DeSantis stumble his way through this issue because it's all about anti-black racism. Like you said, Trouble, something that he's been promoting to run for president of the United States. Miracle?
Yes. So on Saturday, Angela Carr, Anol Laguerre, I think is how you say Laguerre, and Gerald Deshaun Gallion were murdered by this white supremacist who had apparently tried to target other areas where he believed that black people were congregating.
Yes.
And we have to talk about historically churches, stores, and schools are the places that white supremacists target when they are trying to create terror and panic within black communities, because those are the places that we are forced to gather and congregate due to white supremacy and redlining and other white supremacist actions. And so he intentionally killed these people because he wanted to kill black people.
Yes.
And he did this on the weekend of the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, where MLK gave his infamous I Have a Dream speech. And the fact that 60 years later, we are fighting the very same issues and supremacy that our ancestors were doing 60 years later, I think is very telling.
True.
And for the people in Florida who have found themselves at this cesspool of white supremacy, they don't have any support, right? Because if you want to say black victims, here is the number for you to call for support and investment, the state has banned that, right? You literally cannot even do cultural competency in the state of Florida.
Correct.
Because the state has banned that. So not what we're looking at for black people in Florida, they're being preyed upon, and now they have no protection. The government's not going to protect them.
Right.
Their communities can't even protect them because their communities are fighting just to survive because they can't even say the word black.
Right.
And this is why we have to fight back against supremacist violence, and why we have to call it white supremacy, and why we have to sit there and say that we have a right as black people to say black, to be black, and to congregate and fight for resources for black people.
Absolutely. No, yeah, 1,000%. There actually was. And shout out to the people in Jacksonville. You know, obviously there were different vigils, and there was one where DeSantis was brought up. And shout out to the crowd because, you know, they shut him down and kind of booed him lustily during this
hell of an adjective, Wow.
Can you play that clip?
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is here. We're going to ask the governor if he will come now and bring remarks.
Who's clapping? Like, why is this clapping? Like,
you hear that?
ooh,
yeah.
Thank you for doing this. I want to just say to the councilwoman, I got
Yeah, you can pause that. You can pause that. And I'm so shocked. Right, you heard somebody say like the blood is on your hands, and it's like you create this environment where you make like just the teaching of our history like illegal.
So what
like
are you,
literally?
Like, my question for Governor DeSantis is like, is your stance? Oh, I just want to subjugate you. I don't want to see you dead. Is that your stance? It's like, because that has to be your official retort. If you're not going to respond, it's like, oh, I didn't want you to die.
Right.
I just want to dehumanize you.
Right. 100%. Yeah. You wanna oppress. You want to kind of keep them under you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
subjugation. That's what I said. Like,
it'd be the same thing if there's violence against, you know, queer folks who he's also came out, you know, against. It's like, oh, I don't want you to die or be killed. But I don't know. Maybe he does, but it's like, keep it in the closet.
Right.
Like, it's like you want that violence, or you want the implications or ramifications of your policies to be like behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Because when it is in your face in such a in such a manner like it is, where the guy writes a manifesto and he's fans of people like DeSantis and Trump, and you know what I'm saying? And so when you have that history right in front of you, what other, you can only just connect the dots.
I almost made a really terrible joke.
To like, these are your policies, and your policies have led to and these 3 black people being killed. And the question is, and I think like Miracle has to add, we have to then start to say, what does our security look like?